Welcome back, everyone, to the HNL Movement Podcast. Today is another exciting episode planned, and this is one of the more recent ones that we've done live. So it's great to have a live guest back, and we have none other than Garvin Tsuji, the athletic trainer at Mililani School, one of the athletic trainers there, and he's going to share a lot of great things. He's also very involved with our organizations, and we'll talk about that as well. But thank you so much for joining me, Garvin.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I know we've been trying to plan this and kind of, work our schedule so we can do this. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And so a little backstory. When I was a master's student, trying to pursue athletic training and get certified, Garvin was one of the stops that I went to. And it was to be transparent, I really did not want to work in a high school or have a high school rotation. But surprisingly, I was like, oh, this is actually really good. This is really fun. And I learned a lot from, you and Dayton at the time. And it was just a different experience. But that's kind of when I first met you and got to know you and everything. And from then, I've seen a lot of things. We've worked together on things too. And there's been a lot of great conversations along the way. So before we get into kind of how that came to be, let's go over your story. So I was just telling you before we started recording, I don't really know too much of your story before I actually met you. So why don't we start like just childhood, playing sports. I've of course heard stories and stuff, but go over about what it was like growing up, in Hawaii playing sports, and were you always interested in athletics?
Yeah, this is that's a long story in itself, but yeah, I grew up in Mililani, and as probably most people my age in Mililani at that time, we played baseball and soccer. That was the thing to do. We never had iPads. We never had all these electronic gadgets to fool around with. So whether it was, we'd be at the fields for things, or we'd just be like playing wiffle ball with like an old broomstick handle. That's the way we grew up. Yeah. I guess being active. But my dad used to just pack up the van, and he was my coach for all my baseball and soccer teams until I got to a certain age, and he kind of just let me go. But my two brothers, he was always a coach, so he's kind of like that big influence on like why I would try to be the coach for my kids' teams. But yeah, we were always baseball, soccer, but there was never a time where it was always baseball or always soccer like how it can be nowadays. It was we had soccer, then we'd roll into like maybe a select season. Yeah. Then after that it'd go into baseball, then it'd go into the all-star season, then you kind of have a break, and then the cycle would just happen again. But yeah, it's probably everybody in my kind of era, age group wise, would probably have something similar. That baseball and soccer, that was it growing up. I felt like I was too small for football, and
yeah. So growing up, playing baseball and soccer, did you have a favorite sport, or which one did you see yourself either loving more or playing the longest? Which one of the two?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I enjoyed the team aspect of soccer because you'd have to move if you wanted the ball, and you'd have to be looking for. You couldn't just dribble down the field by yourself. I loved baseball. I loved the challenge of it. The mental side, I think, more. I think that part, because I would pitch or I'd catch, so I think that there's a lot of involvement. But I think in the long term, it probably would have been baseball, because I don't think I like to run that much in soccer.
Yes, so you went on to play like all through your childhood and in high school too, right?
Yeah.
So in high school, what positions did you play in those sports? And
yeah, soccer. Yeah, that running thing again, man. I ended up playing an outside mid, so man, that was so much running. I remember a lot of ILH games. There were just like a lot of running, and just feeling really gassed at the very end of the game. In baseball, I typically played infield, usually second, first. I pitched once in a while, but I was definitely not a high school pitcher. But yeah, mostly infield, and just had fun with it. That we had some really talented players that I played along with too in both sports. Guys that ended up playing, at the next level. I was certainly not a next level player. I knew where my place was.
Thinking about that, I always like to ask for, all of us thinking back to when we were playing sports. You already kind of mentioned that it was very different. You actually had seasons, right? Maybe 2 back-to-back seasons, but then you're going on to the next sport. It wasn't like year-round soccer, year-round baseball like how it is now. There just wasn't the opportunity, right? Talk a little bit about that, like especially maybe in your high school years. What was it like, I guess? What was the outside leagues like or clubs like? And then also, how much did you have like athletic training services? How much did you have, any type of strength and conditioning, which, even when I was growing up, there was like hardly any of that, or we weren't exposed to that, right? But talk a little bit about the landscape of like high school sports training, athletic training.
Yeah, high school sports was, I think mine was a little different because I can recall this vividly. Like, are you gonna go to soccer tryouts? And like, well, I don't know. I'm, okay. These guys are going. Okay, well, I guess I'll go. And then we end up running that first day, and I didn't have any idea that we're gonna run that much. It's like you come home, but in that sense, I was like, oh man, what did I do? Then all of a sudden, they have cuts. I'm like, wow, there's cuts. There's just a lot of guys out here. Oh, I'm on the, how did I make the varsity team? Is that right? But yeah, I mean, I think that was eye-opening because that was a lot of running, a lot of training, a lot of like Saturdays, and that was every single day. There's not like a day off throughout the week really, except for your Sunday, which you try to get homework done. But yeah, as far as like athletic training wise, we had nobody. We had, I was lucky to go to HBA, and we had somebody that would be able to tape an ankle, but I think I'm like most people's stories on why you got involved into this. I sprained my ankle. There's nobody there. I remember the AD at Midpack at the time, Coach Botello, like long time legend. I remember having to carry me off to the gym. I was like, that is kind of embarrassing nowadays, but yeah, I kind of remember that. But yeah, even in baseball, we had nobody. You just kind of get a massage on your arm and just kind of go back at it. But it was the only part that was really good for me personally was the idea that I did soccer, and soccer was a winter sport. So that running helped me go into baseball into the spring. I was in shape, and none of the running in baseball was going to be that bad. So it was, that part helped me. But,
for sure. Baseball people are not meant to play soccer, but it does help. The conditioning in soccer definitely helps with baseball conditioning. Makes it seem easy, right? Talk a little bit about, so you mentioned, you sprained your ankle. Was there any other injuries too when you were playing in high school?
Not really. Just that one bad sprain, I remember. Nowadays the treatment is a cam boot. You can take it off, take a bath. At that time, a grade 2, grade 3 sprain, you're casted. You're casted.
So you were casted.
Yeah.
For how long?
It was like 2 to 3 weeks. I was like, it was horrible. But one of my good friends too, he was playing basketball at the time. We showed up the next day in school, and we both had casts on, and we both had bad ankle sprains. It was horrible.
So think about that too. And that was kind of the standard of care right back then. But now, of course, knowing what we know now and everything, like think about your experience then. How did you kind of said that got you interested in like, okay, maybe there's a better way to rehab or strengthen and, get back to activity. But where you were then, should I talk a little bit about that experience, what it was like for you going through it, right? And then how was it to get back after being casted for like 3 weeks?
Well, my mentality was, oh, God, I got to get back playing. So probably the worst decision of my life, but like I can look at it now, was the day I got the cast off. What did I do? Put on my cleats, try to go running around the field. That was miserable. That was so sore. But I didn't know any better. We didn't know any better. We had no direction. So it's, that kind of things. And that's kind of what, it didn't drive me into this profession, but I can look back and reflect that was one thing that we had no services. We had nobody to help out the athletes, and I was certainly not the only one getting hurt. And that's something that I think makes a huge difference nowadays.
That's actually my follow-up question is, explain a little bit, because you hear it all the time, right? As an athletic trainer now, and like kids, they're not playing outside as much, or maybe their movement quality is lacking, or maybe they're predisposed to certain injuries more than what we're seeing before, especially like ACL injuries and things like that. But talk about when you were playing high school sports, baseball and soccer. You said that you weren't the only one getting injuries, right? What kinds of injuries do you remember your teammates getting or seeing a lot of, and how was that different than today? Or it might be similar too.
Yeah, it's actually similar, because I think a lot of quad injuries in soccer, especially when you first start the trial period, you start the tryouts, everybody's trying to rip shots, everybody's trying to make these long kicks to try to show that you can hit the ball hard. But in the whole scheme of things, it's the same thing now, with the exception of maybe now they might have a quad strain because they did it in a club practice or a club setting, whereas back then, dating myself, but there was no club. Or it was like just starting, literally just starting off when I was finished. So I only know because I have younger brothers, and I know that they started playing like different things. But yeah, that thing is way different now.
Yeah, no, that's interesting to hear, right? And think about that, because there was not other activities, and you kind of mentioned that there wasn't too much training outside of practices. How do you think you guys did other things that actually helped you to get prepped for sport, right? If it wasn't strength and conditioning, or, structured strength and conditioning in a weight room or with a trainer, right? How can you explain a little bit about what kinds of things you think helped you guys?
Yeah, man, I almost wish that I had access to that, but I don't know if I'd be a disciplined person to keep going to it. But I think it was when I look back at what we did, just fooling around, but we actually did some plyo stuff, because we had rock walls, so we kind of jump up onto the wall and jump down, or if we hit the ball into somebody else's yard, it'd be like a quick sprint, jump, and jump back over before the dog came out. But I think that kind of stuff, or going to even I mean, we weren't huge people, but you're at the elementary school or the playground there, and they have like rings, and they have the bars, so you're just swinging on those and trying to go across. So you don't realize that now that I look back, that's how we did our upper body strength. Yeah, but I think those kinds of things, and just jumping on your bike, and we just go riding. Obviously, it was probably a lot safer then than now, but. Yeah, we would go biking all over the place, and it felt like that was, now that I reflect on thinking about that, that's where we got our workouts from. And it wasn't the same every day, right? Or either that, or we put the slide out on the grass and put water and soap, and then all of a sudden we got the slippery slide thing, right? So you run a quick sprint, dive, or whatever, and slide, and go back and do it again. And
that's very true.
Or going to the beach even. Yes. I mean, that's what we used to do a lot more. Yeah. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that go, but I mean, there's running in the sand, that's all the things that we did growing up.
That's actually a good point, right? All of these things that it was just like more active than what you see now. Even biking. I mean, people still bike, but it's not like you see kids biking all over just because there's so much more cars, there's so much more traffic, there's just so many more things, right? Variables that we didn't have, or growing up before didn't experience that. And also like monkey bars, that's actually like, I don't know, I guess I haven't been to a lot of playgrounds, but even the playgrounds you see at parks and adjacent to gyms and stuff, I don't know how many of them have monkey bars. It's like and it might be a safety
Yeah,
issue
it
or
might be a
whatever.
safety issue.
But then it's like all these decades, like we had monkey bars, you know, kids played on it all the time. Yeah, you're gonna have the freak accidents, but I think there's a lot of benefit to that too, right? Like the parent has to watch their kid, of course, but you know, there's a lot of benefit to building some upper body strength with monkey bars.
Yeah, we always try to go, you know, you kind of go every single one, right? Then you try to skip.
Yeah.
Just see, can you skip 2?
Yeah, exactly. That's actually a good point. You know, I never thought about that, but just again, if you're not doing, especially for the younger age, if you're not doing, you don't have to do like structured speed and agility or strength and conditioning or whatever, but playing outside, I think that gives you a lot of the tools that you'll utilize in sports. And you can do that even all the way to like intermediate high school if you want to get a like more workout, I guess, that's outside of like a weight room, right?
Yeah, if you don't have access, there's always some place that you can probably find that does something. But the hardest part is just finding that someplace.
Yes. And even like you said, going to the beach, doing all, you know, ocean activities, whatever, all of those things, it develops that capacity that we don't really realize. And it might double because it might be a little bit more fun. So you might stick with it more than just going into the weight room workout every time, right? So that's a very interesting point. Now, I want to talk about, so as you experience this through high school, right? And this is how I know of you. I know you're an Oregon State alum, right? But how did this spark interest, or did you have any idea at, you know, maybe your senior year of high school or when you graduated, that this was the path that you were going to take? Did you already have that decided, or what was your path like to become an athletic trainer?
Oh man, I had such a different path that I had really planned out for myself. I was a business major, you know, mostly business, like TIM, travel industry management, and then I had a Japanese minor. That was my plan. I was like, oh yeah, this looks fun. This looks like something that I can do. So yeah, I went to OSU, you know, did that, and you know, on track to graduate. And then I was like, I think it was after my junior year. I don't know if I want to sit behind a desk all day. I don't know if that's me. Start questioning that, and then I think you know, I found some of my friends were in athletic training. I was like, started looking at them. I'm like, so you guys get to watch sports all the time? They're like, yeah, you know, we're at, you know, go to all the games. And oh, okay. So I tag along, and lo and behold, call my parents. I'm going to change my major. Oh man, that was not a good conversation. So it just added time to my you know, undergrad, but you know, but I had to load up, so I was taking like 21 credits a term just to catch up, basically. There's some things in business that transferred because it was, I guess, when you get to the upper division classes, they kind of cancel out each other. So I didn't have to take that many, but it was just load up classes and just go for it. So I didn't have that plan.
Got it. Actually, I think you may have mentioned that. It sounds a little familiar as you're talking through it, because I'm a business major too in undergrad and had to make that shift after. Are some of those friends now, were they at OSU at the time, or are they practicing here?
Yeah, they're at OSU. So
got it.
one of my friends, I still talk to her quite a bit, or not as often as I think we did before, but you know, she was the first female athletic trainer in the NFL with the Steelers. She has, you know, her Super Bowl, you know, pendants and rings. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah. But Ariko Iso, but she, you know, she was one that really, you know, influenced a little bit. And I think just because I saw, you know, and one of her friends, I remember this guy, I think I don't know if he's still practicing in Japan, but he was. Satoshi Kikuchi, but he was this 6'3" Japanese guy that played basketball. We'd always want him on our team, but yeah, I mean, some influences that were, you know, like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. But you know, from their culture side, they're not Americans, right? They're Japanese nationals, so they had a work ethic that was, to me, contagious. Yeah.
So when you actually started to, you know, they got you interested in this, what was your first experience like? Because everyone has like a first experience, right? That, okay, this is what athletic training is, right? It's not just that perception of sitting around watching sports,
yeah.
right? But what was it like to transition from being a business major, Tim major, Japanese minor into, okay, I'm starting to get my feet wet with athletic training?
Yeah, that was a little different. Funky hours, because now instead of like being done with school at like, especially like later on, I was done with school at like 12.
Yeah.
And now before I had nothing to do, but you find stuff to do, you work out and have your day. But now all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're going to the training room and we're going to spend some time in there. And before that, and then you're getting out at like 6, 6:30, whatever the case may be. And then now it was completely changed. Then, but I had to finish my stuff at UH because I was like, okay, I'm done with the class, right? I just need the hours and all that. So most of that at UH, and then kind of taking classes again just to like refresh. I'm like, oh yeah.
Got it.
But
so you finished all of the course requirements at OSU.
Most of them, yeah.
And then you did the internship route through UH, right? Yeah. So after you came back and you went to UH, right? Did you already have kind of an idea that this is what you're gonna pursue?
Yeah. I had spoken to our program director at OSU, and his good friend happened to be the program director at UH. Got it. So Bart Buxton.
Got it.
So at that point, it was like, hey, just do that and just finish it up, and like, okay, that's. But my mom was actually the one. She's like, hey, look, there's these jobs that are. I'm like, what do you mean jobs? I'm like, these jobs, they're in the newspaper, and she had like, cut it out and sent them to me. Like, there's these jobs in Hawaii that look like they're gonna open, or it's gonna come. She was a DOE teacher, so everything in the DOE was news. So, and then she said, well, you should really look into it. Okay, because you like sports. I mean, growing up, literally, she'd be upset with me because she'd take us to the library. That's another thing that we used to do a lot. And I would only borrow books about sports or autobiographies of like Hank Aaron or stuff like that. She'd be so, why don't you get these other books? It's not interesting to me.
Yes.
Or how back then also the newspapers used to publish, like I remember Sundays used to have everybody's batting averages. And I would just be there for an hour just going through.
No, but that's how you know that's kind of your passion, right? What you gravitate to. So I gotta go through the story. So after you went and finished all of your curriculum, right, and you made the switch, or do you want to mention anything about when did your parents start to come around? By the time you started internship hours, or still it was convincing them that this is a good idea?
Yeah, internship hours. I mean, thankfully, I could get a ton of hours at Mililani High School with Troy Furutani. He was there, so we have the battle because he went to University of Oregon.
Yes.
But even at UH, right, with Eric Okasaki, then everybody's like we owe a debt of gratitude towards him and for him giving us all an opportunity to prove ourselves at some level. But after I think they saw and I used to go home and I would practice taping on them, or I would practice doing all the tests on them, or my grandma, my grandpa, and whoever was around would be like, hey, borrow your arm, borrow your ankle. But I think once they saw that and they saw that I was interested, I think that was when it was, just pursue. Even though the hours are funky, I'd come home. I remember after football games, like after midnight, they're like, what are you doing? I was working at the school.
It's things that I guess even especially then, I would say, because athletic training was not very known, right? Even in this day and age, I think a lot of people don't realize how much behind the scenes work actually happen, right, for sports medicine or athletic training. But it's good to kind of show them that you're very interested, invested, right? And you're loving what you do, so that probably makes it easier to go through all of these things as all of us athletic trainers do, right? So when you kind of experienced that, you were doing internship hours and stuff, let's spend a little time on this because, you know, that's where all of you guys in the community, right? Your generation of athletic trainers, you guys have definitely helped me a lot throughout my career and, you know, paved the way for athletic training, especially in the DOE or the public high school setting, right? Talk a little bit about what that experience was like. Internship hours, you know, obviously you guys were doing a lot more, you know, that maybe in this day and age, maybe regulations don't kind of permit that, but you guys were doing a lot more. But at the same time, that developed your skills, I feel like, so much more, right? Yeah, so explain that a little bit when you came back working your internship hours in the University of Hawaii athletic training room.
Yeah, I think for the internship, I think at that time the minimum requirement was 1,500 hours over the course of 2 years before you could sit for your board exam. I do recall when I took my board exam, I had about 2,500 hours. So, I mean, yeah, a ton of hours, but that got us used to, you know, being there. And, you know, at that time, again, different era, right? We had football camp. We had these ridiculously long days, like 14 to 16 hour days at least.
Yes.
And, you know, we'd be like, oh, where are we going to sleep? Where are we going to take a nap? Or how are we going to function? But I think just with that time frame and always being together with those other, you know, athletic trainers, you know, guys and gals, you know, we're all kind of in the same area. But it's just a matter of, you know, we're all together. So, you know, not that we're forced to kind of become friends, but you know, truly that paved the way for a lot of us to be able to kind of lean on each other throughout as we were kind of going through our growing pains, right? A lot of us were first athletic trainers in our respective schools. So it was, you know, we'd have those sessions of like, hey, can we all get together because everybody needs to vent something. And that camaraderie, that ability to kind of release some of that pent up frustration, I think was invaluable. And I don't know that you see that today, but I think, you know, we had a big group of people that I think we all came from, you know, I think most of us played sports. So, you know, we all kind of understood, you know, it's funny for me because I see, you know, Lenny Baum, and I'm like, hey man, you were on my baseball team when we were like 13 or he's like, he didn't remember, but then it's like, oh, we were. But it's just funny how we all crossed paths too. But that time, that exposure to that many different sports and those hours, I think it certainly benefited us in our mentality on how we want to be the one to provide the services to the athletes. But, you know, just having them have somebody to come to, whereas when we could reflect, right? My only exposure was none at my schools, but when I remember I got hurt on Punahou's field or, you know, then that's a little different.
Yeah. So thinking about that too, right? You had all of this. Can you, and again, not to date you or anything, but
I'm dated.
What was what time frame was this when they first started getting around the second athletic trainer in the DOE system? Was that around the time that you were completing your internship hours, or did you complete your internship hours before that second position even got created?
Oh, way before.
Way before.
Yeah, way before. Because I was the original. I was one of the first ones.
Like group or internship group.
So I think initially it started in like 94 was that initial first wave that had, I think, 10, first one, right? The 10 pilot. And then after we all, I think they added a few more in 95, and then in 97 is that school year, 97, 98 was wave. It filled like everybody.
Got it. So thinking about that, right? Obviously, you guys all kind of work together. A lot of that first group of initial athletic trainers in the high school setting, right? But thinking about that, let's talk a little bit about, and you know, this could be a whole nother episode, but and you just don't have to share everything.
I'm game.
But let's talk about, because you know, you had so many experiences there. Maybe just one or two of the highlights. And I hear the stories, right, of all of you guys, but one or two of the things that these experiences really help to shape you to get ready for being on your own in a high school setting, right? And this is, I think this is, just to give some back context, right? it's exceptionally hard because, one, you're relatively early on in your career, but two, no one knows what an athletic trainer is. So you're going into school, you guys know what athletic trainers are, but just no one else knows what athletic training is. So it's communicating that to the athletes, administration, coaches, parents, right? So what do you think helped you in that internship years that helped as best as you could to be ready for that kind of situation, right?
Well, I think for the internship, I was doing kind of both ways, in Mililani and UH. Okay. So I think my time spent at Mililani was a lot. So I think by Troy allowing me to shadow him, and I was probably a pain in his butt because I'd be going to every single game that I could go to. So I think the fact that I went to a lot of different schools, and so I could see a lot of different things. I think that helped, because Mililani was one, just one spot, but we would play, other schools that didn't have any athletic trainers. So that I think helped me, and I think some of the relationships that I got to meet some other people. I think that made a difference. So that when it came time to apply and go through the interview processes, I think that certainly helped. Like, I already knew what the high school situation would look like, what that landscape looked like, what my ideas, my visions were. I think that certainly helped, and that was Troy's influence on that.
Got it. Thinking about that time too, explain a little bit about, obviously there were a lot of obstacles, I think, early on, especially when you're implementing this new service to high school athletes that have no idea. And the reason why I'll speak on this a little bit is, and again, we're both kind of dating ourselves, but I graduated high school in 2004, and there was already an athletic trainer at every high school. And Kevin Chang was the athletic trainer at Moaloa. I never saw him once. And it's not because I didn't get injured. We just didn't know. Like, if we got injured too, the coach wasn't like, oh, go see the athletic trainer. It was just like, oh, well, do what you have to or whatever. So it wasn't that I was opposed. I just didn't know, right?
Yeah.
So thinking about that, we're talking about 97 when that was 7 years later, and I still didn't know what an athletic trainer was. And I've said it many times with guests, I didn't know what an athletic trainer was until I was a senior in college. So that's like 2008. I didn't know what an athletic trainer was, and we're like 14 years in the state of Hawaii that athletic trainers are, more so spread out than any other state at that time, right? So in 1997, what was it like, I guess? Because no one knew what an athletic trainer was. So what was that kind of situation like in the infancy stages?
That was tough. That was tough for a lot of us. I think everybody just thought all we did was tape and make water or whatever the case is. I remember getting introduced to the football team for the first time, and one guy raised his hand, "Can you spat us for practice?" And I'm like, no, that's certainly not happening. People, they just wanted their own tape. They just wanted, they didn't want, really to be, I think, invested yet. They wanted to, it was a trial period for a lot of coaches. I tried to give the message that you don't have to worry about these injuries and how these kids will come back. You have to just worry about the coaching side. And I think that kind of helped bridge it a little. And I think all it took was maybe a couple injuries. And I think some coaches knew what an athletic trainer could do, because I remember vividly my first week at Radford. It would be like the basketball coach brought this girl to me and said, "Can you check her knee? She hurt it during." So one quick eval, one quick torn ACL diagnosis, and it's like, wow. I think that right there was the one that I think everybody kind of knew now. I was like, oh, okay, you can go to him for that, or to just check up on things that maybe have been nagging. So I would get so many nagging injuries, but one, I guess, plug it, Radford wanted a little thing there, but we had, because Radford is mostly military, so some kids, like, I was not prepared for the amount of paperwork that I had to do, because I would have a whole bunch of incoming new kids every single year, and a whole bunch that just left.
Yeah.
And just kind of, for me at that time, it fell off. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know where they were, and that was something that I think I was ill prepared for. But it took a couple of years to kind of, hold the organization, because we didn't have like so much electronic files at that time, right? It's all paper.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah, like all of these things, basically developing this system and program and new kind of service from scratch, right? How much guidance was there from the DOE, or because like they did this mass hiring, they knew it was going to be a challenge, right? How much of, besides you guys going on your own and kind of meeting together, right? How much of that support, I guess, initially, or was it more like, okay, this is the kind of framework, figure out how to implement it?
Yeah, it was more the framework thing, because the people that had been in already were, they were super helpful and let us know like what needed to be done. So we tried to, and at that time we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So we would have like meetings at night after work. We'd go to dinner somewhere and stay till like 11 at night, just because we just needed to talk and vent, but then also bounce ideas. That's where a lot of these ideas came from. So what we end up doing, so that was really cool. No,
I cannot even imagine, like, starting it and all of these new services and things like that. When you guys first started, right, explain a little bit about like coverage, volume. I know high school sports have grown since then, but still, it was still crazy for like one or two people to handle this many sport teams and athletes. But explain a little bit about what the high school sports landscape was. And you started at Radford, right? Immediately off the bat.
Yes.
What year?
Well, no, I actually had a university lab school as my first job.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that. So that was university lab school after your internship was done, right? And then university lab school, how many years were you at?
That was only a single year.
A single school year. And then after that, you went into Radford.
Yeah, because the university lab was only a part-time position.
Oh, I see.
So then the state obviously benefits road got me going because it's full-time.
Yes. Okay, so you went into Radford, right? When did you start at Radford?
97.
Okay, so 97. Explain a little bit, 97's going into the early 2000s. What was it like? Like, how many teams, what kind of volume were you seeing? Like, how crazy was it, pretty much?
Initially, it wasn't that crazy because, like you said, everybody didn't really understand what I did. But after that first year, then I started to see a lot of kids, a lot of stuff after school. I started only with one treatment table, got the wood shop involved. I actually ended up taking over the space that was the wood shop storage.
Got it.
So it was a good space, really good space. But that part was, volume wise, was good. But just the fact that I think we kind of turned the corner on like everybody understanding what I ended up doing. I had some really good athletes too at that time, and that really trusted me, like Ashley Lee, Wayne Hunter. These guys, NFL guys. Later on, but it's funny that we're still in touch today. But just that time frame was just super busy. Multiple events at the same time. I could have a basketball game and a soccer game going on at the same time. So I would just kind of hang out, check on both. And, I don't know. We made it work, right? And if somebody else didn't have a game that night, then they would come and help, and then like vice versa. We would try to help each other out. So there was somebody try to be at each event. Otherwise, time out on the court.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, and I'm on the soccer field, or a game stoppage on the soccer field. I'm in the gym. It worked though. It worked.
So it was just you early on.
Yep.
For how many years was it just
first
you?
10, I believe.
First 10 years it was just you? Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
How in the world did you manage? So after, word spread, traction's picking up, right?
Yep.
How did you manage kind of even just the demands of the training room, right? Because, after school, and by the time I was observing, I think it was like 2011 maybe or something, 2012, I don't know. But even that, after school crowd, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's coming in.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have everyone kind of trained to help each other out. Students doing a lot, you guys managing. But how do you early on manage kind of that volume, especially after school, getting you prepped for practice, helping any athletes that can't go to practice, right? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I think just letting everybody know that first people that's gonna have priority are those that have like a game like right after school. But for a public school, it wasn't that bad because the first games typically were at 5, so there's a lot of time. So that went to the next group was going to be, all right, tape prep or first aid, whatever the case may be, so you can go to practice. That you guys were next. Then after that, usually if school got out at like 2:30, then maybe by like 3:30-ish, then we'd get all the rehab people and kind of get that wave going and get people started. So at that point we could spend a little bit more time, especially if they're a first timer, showing them what they need to do, demonstrating, giving them feedback. Then after that, next couple of days they could kind of function a little bit better on their own. Then just kind of quick, yep, that still looks good, or we're moving to the next step, and a little bit more instruction. But then after that, we get to that game prep at like 4:30, and then I had to be kind of structured. I'm a structured kind of guy. That's why it was like when we're doing do this, I'm like, wow, there's no questions. Okay.
No, and people have said this before on episodes, but yes, to be completely transparent, a lot of guests ask like, okay, what are we going to talk about? And I'm like, I find it works best when we just go with the flow. So I literally do not do any planning for this. And it's just like, I just sit here. It actually is mindless for me now. It's like, okay, podcast today. I have nothing to prepare. Let's just go and record it. But I know it can be a little bit more like, oh, what's going on here if you like the structure, right? But that structure, it did help you to manage. Because how many athletes do you think Radford had like around those early years?
Around those early years, I think we're at like 600 or so.
So maybe like 200 per season?
Well, we count if somebody played 3,
maybe like 100, 150,
so
200 per season, depending how many multi-sport. That's still a lot, right? So for one person to get all of these guys prepped and everything, thinking about that too, this is kind of good too. I like to hear how it was, before, because this is how it got us to like where we are now, right? But thinking about that, do you think there were any other obstacles, like as far as coverage or treatment, or even just getting the athletes to understand? Because every time you have a new wave, especially in the high school, right? Every 4 years is kind of like a brand new turnover. Yeah, there's bridging the gap because seniors kind of show the juniors, sophomores what to do, but essentially every year it kind of transitions where like the 9th graders again, they have to learn all over again, like, okay, come see me for these things, report these things, right? Tell your parents these things. Was there anything early on that you think, these were like growing pains at the time? Because again, athletic training was not like widespread.
Well, I think during the growing pains times, I think what maybe some people, I don't know how many of them will go out there, but I think something that was super helpful was going to these parent meetings.
Okay.
Fall sport, winter sport, spring sport, going to the parent meetings and just speaking in front of all the parents. This is what I do. This is what I'm capable of. This is how I could save you a doctor's trip, or whatever the case is, and or like, because I'm mostly military, this is our connection at Tripler, and he is really, really good. So, and they would see it. Oh, you got us in like the next day. Usually it's like a like a month wait. I said, this is how it is.
And you guys had to create all of those connections, right? Like, that wasn't set up for you by anyone else, or did you already
not really. I think our previous doctor at the time would just volunteer just because of the military. But I got to know. I think he wasn't a med student. He was probably doing fellowship already at that time. But I got to know him real well, and so it would be like a quick call, a quick email, and then could be same day. Then they're getting in. I'm like, wow, this is probably the best service. I'm still tight with him today. So and he's still up at Triple, just not active duty anymore.
Yes.
But it's probably and he was a really good surgeon too. So
it's no, that's awesome. No, thinking about that, and then we'll kind of fast forward a little bit. So eventually you got number 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was Dayton immediately off the bat, right?
No, it was Neil.
Oh, that's right. It was Neil first, and then Dayton came after. So that's right. See, I forget all the time frame of everything. So, thinking about that, like, how did that come to fruition, or how did you? Obviously, like, just the volume alone, it's easily justifiable. But how did you get everyone to be on board? Administration, also DOE had to fund another position, right? I didn't realize you went that long without a number 2 or other help, right? But explain a little bit about how that came to be.
Yeah, there's just a lot of data collection, a lot. I mean, that's all we did. I mean, I would keep track of everything. I would go in on Sundays to compile the data for the week. It's just a lot of data collection to prove that this is how many people you're seeing, this is what treatments you're doing, this is what everybody needs. And then for us at the time, seconds are kind of coming around, and I think we're in the second wave of the second athletic trainer. So I think some people had it a little bit before. But yeah, it was a no-brainer because we knew Neil. Neil was an alum. I would feel bad, but I would ask him, hey, do you mind coming to help tape, like prepping between these games for football? And he would always do it. So I mean, I'm grateful for him and his wife. But yeah, they're super, super easy, and that was a no-brainer.
No, and then Neil is great. He's been on the podcast too. Neil has taught me a lot as well. But seeing like how you transform kind of that culture and all the services that you had at Radford, it was definitely very impressive. To see that you grew that. Let's just real quickly, I just want to connect the dots. But obviously soon after that, after my experience with you, maybe a few years after, you left Radford, right? And explain a little bit about why it was time to go, I guess. You don't have to share too much, but then and then what you're doing now, because now you're at Mililani, right? So I actually maybe in the last couple years, this is probably the most I've ever saw you, even when I was at pro. Like, you're crossing paths at like private school stuff or whatever. But anyway, explain a little bit about what was that transition like to leave Radford. And
leaving the athletic training room at Radford is tough because that's something that you built from I built from scratch. There's literally nothing there. But actually, it's life happens. I got married. I had kids. I didn't want to. I could see where I would lose a lot of time with them, so I decided to. I think soon after you left, I enrolled. I went back to school, but most of my classes were thankfully at night. So I'd pay somebody just to cover like the last hour, so I could go to class and get that done. But I went back. I got my post back in teaching and for K through 12 PE. So that was super good fun. I joke with some of the coaches. I was like, why didn't you tell me teaching was fun? They're like, you find it fun? I said, yeah, I find it fun. So I actually I was teaching part-time at Pearl Harbor Elementary. Then got a lot of good experience there on classroom management. Then I got hired at Radford in the classroom. So I just transitioned right to the classroom, teaching sports med, PE. But the kids were like, I thought your class was gonna be easy. I'm like, it's not easy. So it was kind of an eye opener. But so it's led me to doing. Having time with the family, that made a huge difference. I could drop off at preschool, pick up. I could coach their teams. Now my kids are older now, obviously, but I mean, it still matters. So it's good that I still have the ability to be home at reasonable hours or reasonable days, and have that time.
Was it a different transition to Mililani? Well, one, you guys have more staff. Right? But also, like, it's a different type of just resources in general, right? I mean, from the DOE, public school, don't get me wrong, you guys have to do a lot with what you have and get creative and all of that kind of stuff. But in the private school setting, the services you have a little bit more resources to pull from, right?
Yeah.
So what was that like?
Yeah, there is certainly resources.
Yeah.
The other part that I think each DOE school is different too, right? So principals have, really the ability to really help. So I had it started off with Sir Stevens, Robert Stevens, but he super supportive. He was a former coach, so he kind of understood. So that made things a lot easier. But he started, I recall them asking, who needs help at some point, and because I would just talk to people on campus, right? Math teachers, whatever. We're all just talking. So they said, well, Garvin needs help. Yeah. Have you seen his budget? Yeah. So they looked it up and they're like, wow. So actually he started it by like buying all my tape, whatever I needed. And that helped tremendously. That's why I think the training was what it was, right? I had so much equipment in there. But that's the reason. And after that, James Sunday's now the principal, but he carried it on, and James and I started at Radford, I think the same year. So, and he was a coach too. So we knew each other super, super good. And it was the ability that, hey, help you out, because you've done a lot. So, I mean, that, and tape is not getting cheaper. So, but that helped. But Mililani's resources, I think the referral systems, I think in place. I think just overall, I had a combo at Radford of I don't know, I think I had a space that could benefit quite a bit, where I had like almost like a half a weight room, kind of, like almost like a PT type of clinic. And obviously the athletic training side, where you had more like the taping areas and whatnot. So I think that was something. So when people ask me about resources, I was like, I don't know, man.
You did have a lot.
My office shrank. Everything shrank.
that is actually true, because Radford's your space, the athletic training room, your office was big. I mean, you had a full-on couch in your office. I mean, like, in my office right now, I can't even fit a little chair. And there's no couch in there. But anyway, that's kind of it's interesting, because the more that people know, I think they advocate for what you guys can provide, right? And I think that's across the board. It is a necessary service, but sometimes just the value of it is not fully seen, right? Because it's all behind the scenes, right?
It helps to have administrators that have been like coaches before, or have maybe their kids have gotten hurt or something like that. So it makes a big difference. So I think that's something I can't discount that a lot. I was just talking about the other day, I had like 4 bikes, 2 ellipticals, 2 treadmills. I had this pulley weight system. I had these kettlebell. I had a Vertimax. So everybody's like, what? All that in your training room? I said, my training room was big.
It was big, especially for a high school. It was big. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but you did all of this to kind of pave the way, right? And I mean, you gained a lot of experience too that you're applying to your setting right now. I do want to touch on, because you've been very active with leadership roles with HATA, or Hawaii Athletic Trainers Association. Talk a little bit about that. Like, how did that start? I think as long as I've known you, you've always been active or, volunteering for something. But how did that start, and what was that like?
I feel like, my parents have always said, right, if you complain about something, you should have a solution for it, or at least, put yourself, try to do something about it. So, I don't even remember when I started doing stuff, but it was just, I don't remember when, but it started with HATA, just kind of getting a little bit involved on like, treasure at one point. Then we all did the student trainer workshop. I mean, even though I think Reed and Lenny, I think we were leads on that, but we'd always go, right? We'd always just be like, this is a good time when we'd all get together. So just have fun. But, at that point, I think a HATA VP thing, that was, I think Sam Lee had tried, it kind of, I think, pulled me in a little. And then it turned into oh, you're gonna be the rep, or you're gonna get elected to be the rep. I'm like, oh, I don't even know what I'm getting into. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting at this table at Fuado with people that I'm like, holy cow, who are, they're, I don't know them, but I know their names.
Yeah.
I don't know them personally, but I think a lot of it started from people, before, right? It was Beachy, it was Cindy, it was, even though Eric's never had a position in Fuada, but it's always the prodding, the poking, and it's like, then Lynn did it. So I think it's just trying to, carry on some kind of Hawaii representation and be a voice at the table. I think that's something that's huge. And so now, I've been district treasurer. I'm on my second term, and this is something that I always tell people. My first few years, I'm more of an observer to just kind of soak it in and see what the feel is like. Then now, not that I had to wait 25 years before I got involved, but I feel like now is the time to just continue to get, not necessarily climb the ladder, but try to influence what's happening in district, nationally. But a shout out to Kevin Sang. He was the first athlete trainer at Waianae, but he's the one that kind of roped me into Fuada to doing stuff. But he's a professor at Cal State Fullerton. But I remember in New Orleans, the first time we went there, oh, you're on the Career Center. I am? Yeah, you are. You're coming. I'm like, so
just got told to.
It's a voluntold thing. So I'm like, okay. But it's Fuada's given me, like, I think a lot of friends, like, out of state now. A lot. From the first one that we attended, or first one that we hosted here, I think, because we typically can't attend a Fuada. Because it's usually like in April. It's during our spring sports.
Yes.
So I'd never gone to one until it was here. Then I meet people like Junior Domingo, Nelson Chan, Vanessa Pai, Rory, the list goes on, and all the people that now run for the annual meeting. It's like now that they're like family to all of us. So it's like this. It's something that I think if we want to move forward and you want to complain, you can complain all you want. But if you're gonna complain to me, you need to try to get involved. Yeah. And let's move up, and let's challenge the new generation to kind of step into some roles too. Yeah. Don't be afraid to take a step out of your comfort zone, because I hated public speaking, and I don't know why now I'm in front of a microphone with like people in a big room. I'm like, I am not a fan of that. But but you just evolve, right? You evolve just like our profession. It evolves. Our roles evolve. Our standards evolve. So I think that's probably where it's led me now.
No, that's very true, how it keeps kind of evolving, right? And I've seen a lot of different things, in the early parts of my career. I want you to kind of share, where have you seen it evolve to, right? As you've been part of these organizations, I mean, I've heard stories of when Hata was just like 5 people meeting, right? But we've seen it where Hata is pretty strong. Even how you mentioned, when we go to the FOTA meetings and stuff, and not that I know everybody, but through you guys, I meet more people every time. The athletic training community in general is very close-knit, I feel like. FWATA, I think with the Hawaii representation, it's relatively close-knit. But even HATA, our local state organization, that's where everyone kind of, mingles and gets to know each other and then helps each other out, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing that you mentioned, that everyone's really close-knit and supportive. Where have you seen kind of the evolution of the professional side of this, the organization's growing, kind of where the profession's growing, and anything that you can share about that for just people in general, but also aspiring students that may not know how far we've actually come in the past few decades even.
It's certainly moved the needle quite a bit on not necessarily just jobs in general, but like now the standards, right, of what needs to be done. Just something simple, like we would host a cross-country meet before, but then now when you host a cross-country meet, like I have to shout out Chris Pagdilao because he had like 6 tubs set up, ice, tents, privacy station. I think that's where it's evolved to, certainly. But just organizationally wise, it's hard, right? When COVID happened, I think some people may have lost their jobs or maybe a spouse lost their job. So now money becomes tighter, membership becomes tougher. So I think our membership was down. I think this year, it's trending a little back up, but it's like a small percentage, like under 1% maybe movement. But that's the bulk of the fund, really, whether it's NATA, FWATA, HATA, that's what a lot of it revolves around. And I think we all got, as members, we all got that email about how restructuring is happening. I think we don't know how or who yet, but I think when the new year comes, then I think we will know how it affects it a little bit more. Thankfully, I haven't heard anything, but I deal with usually specific people at NATA, and they have not said anything, and I'm not about to ask, but that's obviously to me a good thing, that if we're still continuing to meet and have these conversations, it's actually a good thing. Hopefully NATA, I mean, we used to have some huge conferences, right? We used to have like 10,000 people at some of these. But then now it seems like we're trending a little lower because there's so many CEU opportunities everywhere. Right? You don't have to be in person. You don't have to go get it through NATA. You can get it through somewhere else, which is completely fine. But I think it's important that to be involved, be up to date. I always encourage people to be a member because it's your professional organization. Then that way, if you don't hear about things, there's a reason why you weren't a member. It's going to get disseminated to the membership. And that's where I want more people to be kind of joined at the hip, so we can all move together, I think, as a group versus just small factions maybe.
No, that's a good point too. I think the new and upcoming, and I know there's a lot of moving parts, right? There's been restructuring with the degrees, right? And they're changing you don't see any. I was just talking to someone about it recently too. Like, I don't think you'll ever see a ATC PT anymore because there's no program. Like, people would get ATC first, then go on to PT. Now, who's gonna go from a DAT program to a DPT program? I mean, that's like going to med school already. And with all of the student tuition and stuff like that, it's just unlikely that that's gonna happen, even if people are interested, right? So, a lot of moving parts again, but. The thing that I wanted to ask you is, like, you've kind of seen how it's evolved over many years, right? Where do you want to see it go, and where do you think it's going to go? Sports is seeming to get more popularized, bigger and bigger. There's all these other club leagues and stuff. I mean, what do you think the future is maybe in the next 5 or 10 year for our profession?
Yeah, good question.
And we don't all know, but what's your insights?
I mean, I wish I had like super good insights or something really mind blowing to say, but I think and maybe I thought this would be done within my career frame, but I wanted to see, or I still want to see some sort of third party reimbursement. I want to see, there's a lack of just general providers. On not only on island but nationally, but certainly on island. I'd like to see us to be able to bill for services. Be one in the clinic where it could be a hospital setting most likely, but you see the patient. You have some kind of a patient load, and it's more towards that. But again, for them to be involved would have to certainly see some kind of revenue generated as well, right? You can't just, we're going to pay for this position as a hospital, but it's going to be a losing position. But you have to be able to get something. But I think that's somewhere where I think I want to go and pursue, because athletic trainers, I think there's a lot of people that are looking for 9-to-5 jobs. I mean, athletic training, sometimes you can find something like that. However, there's also times where, that's just not not in our wheelhouse, just based on where location or where we work. But I want to see third party reimbursement at some point, and again, I thought it would be done, but not yet.
That's true. And I think there's a lot of things we could talk on and on about all of these things, but there's a lot of things, right, that hopefully, again, it's just kind of going back to how you started at Radford, right? It's just showing and delivering on the value that I think prevents some of these from actually happening, right? And it's us as an organization, profession, but I do agree with you. I think there's a lot of ways that, yes, as a profession, we can continue to grow, and there's a lot of room for improvement in certain areas, especially with the skill set and the experience that we bring to the table regarding certain types of, cases, injuries, rehab, and things like that. First aid or first response care, right, and all of that. So, there's a lot of things that, even through my short career, right, I've seen all of this growth, and looking forward to see how everything grows more. And I guess the last thing that I wanted to kind of touch on is, I know you had students that you were preceptoring at Radford. I'm not sure how many students, or if you guys have students at Mililani currently, but thinking about that too, looking at the students, right? It is a different time for sure. It's a different kind of work environment and everything. It's not what it was 10, 20 years ago, right?
Certainly not.
But thinking about that, what kinds of maybe just advice or things to think about that you could pass on to these students that are looking to get certified now in 2024, right? What are some of your thoughts and things that you pass on to them?
Yeah, for some of them, I think a lot of them are just timid, or as I think when we first got the grads, the master's program starting to roll out, right? I think a lot of the talk was, well, you're going to get these more motivated students, these more mature students, but I don't know. I need to see more motivation, I think, from them, because I totally get, because we're all there at one point. We all were the people had another job because we needed to pay for school, or we needed this X to so we could do Y. But I think right now there aren't that many students, I think, that are like fully invested into this, and that's kind of where I'm probably scared of, because when again I'm on the opposite side, and I'm closer to the very end. So when I think my friends and I decide that it's time to move to the next phase of our lives, who is going to replace that, and where is that void going to be filled by? And as students now, do you think that you can fulfill that role? I think that's a question that I think they need to challenge themselves a lot more to, hey, have some camaraderie in your cohort, work together. You don't have questions. There are more than enough preceptors out there that are willing to go out of our way to help you. But it's a matter of, you have to take that first step and just fully dive in.
No, that's a good point. And I agree. I've seen some students throughout the years too, and it's hard. Again, it's that fine balance. We're in different times, right? Like, just cost of living here in Hawaii is different, but still yet, fortunately, I'm born and raised in Hawaii. So when I went through the master's program, it was like my whole world kind of revolved around that. But I got immersed to it. I got to get all of these experiences. And it's kind of funny, because as you're talking through this, I'm one of those that hasn't been kind of working in that traditional athletic training setting my whole life, right? Minus that early career, but still yet, like I do think if I didn't immerse myself, none of those other things would have been an option, right?
Right.
So it's that fine balance. Like, students, I do think they have to, kind of completely go all in, immerse themselves, But at the same time, it's like, you got to make ends meet too. So,
Yep.
but every time when students ask me, you know, like what should they do? Every time you get a part-time job or you do this on the side, it takes away from your experience to learn, and it's gonna catch up to you eventually, right? And that's kind of what you're alluding to too.
That's right now. I mean, obviously back in the day, there's no such thing as what we call work-life balance. But that is a thing now, right? Yeah. So we all try to do those things. I made my own work-life balance by just completely changing jobs, and that worked.
Yeah.
So, I always look at it. Well, you can do the same. There are other pathways. Just like how I work now for Innovis. It's for Cade Medical is our local distributorship, but it's the fact that it allows different hours.
Yeah.
And it's a different kind of work, but I'm in it because I have all these connections I've built over the years, and I think that's where the students, you want to build these connections, you want to build these positive connections, so that when it comes time that maybe another opportunity comes in, you are looked at in a positive light. But this Cade job, it came from a Don Joy national rep that I met at FWATA like in, I don't know what it was, 2000 or 1990 something.
Yes.
But that's where this all came from. So those relationships that they all kind of intertwine with each other. And I think for students, you're trying to build this portfolio of connections, but also making sure that when you build these connections, you're diving all into the profession.
Yes, that's a great message. I mean, just you never know how things might unfold based off of what job you did or how good you did it and the connections that you have, right, and all of that. No, this is awesome. I mean, we could talk on and on. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I just want to, if there's any message that you have to the aspiring students, right, beyond that, what we just talked about, or any last words in general, what do you have to say to anybody that might be listening on this? And it could be, aspiring students, but also could be athletes, right? That it's a different time with athletes too. We didn't even really touch on that, but it's a different time. So any athletes to kind of open their eyes that we are a provider that can help you, right? Help you not only with injuries, but help you to perform better, or even just the general public. Because even in 2024, I think it's a lot more mainstream now, especially when you look at some of the very catastrophic but unforeseen circumstances, like with Damar Hamlin, right, in the NFL, right? Those kind of things. That's what athletic trainers are here to do, right? We hope that we never have to encounter this, but that's essentially why we're standing on the sidelines, right? And people don't always understand that, right? It's like, oh, you didn't do anything today. Yeah, well, that's a good day. But 1 out of 10,000 times, if that happens, right, we better be prepared, right? So do you have any last words or last message to anybody out there about athletic training in general?
Yeah, I think, athletic training just as a whole we have a whole lot of skill sets that I think maybe sometimes are underutilized, but I think there are also a lot of things coming down the pipeline as far as within that athletic training education, right? Whether it's starting IVs or starting to do things like that, where it's, those are things and skills that, provide more opportunities. And I think for students that are coming up, maybe they're high school students, maybe they're in college right now as undergrads, but I think there is opportunity as it comes, as time goes on, but I think there's going to be a lot more, but we can certainly fill a lot of voids that are out there. And I think all we need is that opportunity. Who's going to take that first step to kind of, okay, now, we're hired within this clinical setting, but how much more can you do?
Yeah.
And if you're able to provide that and provide some sort of not necessarily revenue, but people see that, hey, there's more people coming to clinic now.
Yeah.
Then that's something that'll help. But just when I start thinking of ending this, but I think for students, for public, for other coworkers, I think one huge thing is you have a cohort for a reason. There, have that camaraderie, have that sense of family when you're doing things. Don't be upset all the time. You can't being mad all the time or frustrated all the time is not going to get you anywhere. You have to have some kind of a positive outlook and see that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you can achieve that. And it's not impossible. You just have to take day by day and step by step, and have that focus. That part I tell my own kids.
Yeah,
you need to focus.
Yeah. I tell the kids that every day almost. But yeah, that's a great message. I mean, yeah, because it's good to hear this too, because everything that you look back on that you built, it didn't happen overnight, didn't happen in 1 year, right? And just the fact that you had to overcome that really by yourself as the only athletic trainer in that position, but not by yourself, because the network that you created, you had support from other teachers, even administrators. That's a good message. And it's kind of the same thing that you apply to any path, right? For the student going through, their curriculum, master's degree, or trying to study for the BOC exam. It's the same thing. Yeah, you have to do it by yourself, but you have a lot of people there to help you, support you. It's your network, it's your cohort. Make sure that everyone's gonna provide something and you help them out as well, right? And that's kind of the big thing, moving everything forward.
That's what to me it's all about. Because if we can keep looking in the past, we're not going to move forward in the future. So we need to definitely look ahead and try to lay a foundation even for the future now. We lay the foundation for people to have their first jobs. But now we need to lay a foundation for those that are, trying to jump in now. It's a different time.
It is. Anyway, I'm looking forward to how everything's going to evolve in the future. But I like this kind of conversation. I learned probably more about you in this last hour than what I've already known. But yeah, it's always great to have these conversations and look back on kind of like the history of athletic training and also where we're going to move forward to in the future. Other than that, thank you so much for taking time. I know we're both busy. You got to get off to everything that you got to do, but I enjoyed the conversation. Awesome to catch up and talk to you, but thanks so much for joining me.
No, thanks for having me, Andrew. This was, definitely something that we had planned for a while, but, made it happen. But look forward to the next one.
Yes, next one, follow up. We got to do something later on.